Sometimes we feel like almost everyone is against us. Often that's inaccurate. But David isn't exaggerating. Listen to him in verses 1 and 2 of Psalm 3. Many are my foes. Many are rising against me. Many are saying that God cannot save me. The superscription reminds us of when Absalom conspired against David his father by stealing the hearts of the men of Israel and declaring himself the true king. In 2 Samuel 15, you can read more about this. In fear of his son's growing strength, David left Jerusalem, ascending the Mount of Olives, weeping as he went, barefoot and with his head covered. 2 Samuel 15:30. Even in his flight, an enemy mocked and assailed David, claiming that he was to blame for these evil days. The first two verses of David's poem captures the scene like this: God, look, enemies past counting. Still, David didn't lose hope. He depicts God as if he were his last friend. David knows that he's outmatched by his enemies. God is not. He's a protective shield around his children. Truly, many thousands of people had surrounded David to kill him, verse 6 says. But by trusting God, David could lay down and sleep without fear. David wasn't hypnotized by his enemy's claim that God had abandoned him. He was looking to God, who saves and blesses his people. Life's circumstances bowed down David's head, but he turned to the Lord, whom he calls the lifter of my head, verse 3. David had little strength, but he had a voice, and so he prayed that God would rise up in power. And he lived as if he were truly beyond the reach of danger. Psalm 3 is a prayer guide for every troubled believer. We don't look to Jerusalem, that holy hill where the Ark of the Tabernacle rested in David's day, as David looked to that hill, as he says in verse 4. We look to Jesus, God's Son and David's son, who also fled to the Mount of Olives 1,000 years later. Not everyone had abandoned David. Hundreds remained with him, some who were fiercely loyal, 2 Samuel 15 says. But Jesus was truly forsaken, overtaken by agony. One disciple would brutally betray him. All would abandon him. But Jesus stayed the course. He can sympathize with us in our troubles. And Jesus rose up in triumph over his enemies and ours. We too have no need to be afraid. This is Psalm 3. A psalm of David when he fled from Absalom, his son. O Lord, how many are my foes? Many are rising against me. Many are saying of my soul, there is no salvation for him in God, Selah. But you, O Lord, are a shield about me, my glory and the lifter of my head. I cried aloud to the Lord, and he answered me from his holy hill, Selah. I lay down and slept. I woke again, for the Lord sustained me. I will not be afraid of many thousands of people who have set themselves against me all around. Arise, O Lord. Save me, O my God. For you strike all my enemies on the cheek. You break the teeth of the wicked. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Your blessing be on your people, Selah.